Okay, welcome to the wrap up of the script relay of the 2026 YouTube Conlang relay. Each one of us was presenting our torch in our script. So we had the step of having to decipher the script. I came after Simulanger, and his language for this relay apparently is a Project Hail Mary fanlang. Now, I have not read Project Hail Mary or seen the movie. So there's a limit to how much I know. There are some things that I have sort of absorbed from people talking about it online because I'm not super fastidious about avoiding spoilers, but eventually I'm going to be reading the book and maybe I will be able to catch the movie if my kids will allow me to do that. But he's calling it Eridianese A or Eridianese A. There's two different spellings in the document. We write these things quickly, folks. And since this is a script relay, you had to have some kind of a script. And this script was kind of avant-garde. So let's actually go and let me show you what I received as a script. Here we go. So it's a bunch of lines. And by looking at, the lines and how they correspond to these equations, I was able to extract numbers. And actually, I need to go find something really quick to show you what I was doing to decipher the script. Because the thing is, this is the torch that took me the longest. I'm recording this after I've already done both the normal relay and the hard mode relay. Hard mode relay did not take me nearly as long, but you'll get to that next week. But let me look up the work I was doing. Okay, so this is the spreadsheet. So if you think about it, the first step in all of this was to go through all of these, and I had to transcribe the length here, and I kept track of what block, what word, and what line within the word. I sort of assuming that these places where where we had a space between was like a word boundary of some kind, which did end up being the case, it seems. So I had to do all of this. And at first I just tried to like match the line lengths to what was going on. So just to clarify, the Iridians communicate in some kind of a musical language. That is canonical to the book. This is a fanlang, I will point out. David and Jesse Peterson were hired to create a canon language for the movie, but my understanding was that that was not used. But Simulanger is making like a fanlang. I don't know if it's supposed to be the language that Rocky speaks or another Iridian language. But the main thing is Iridians can produce precise pitches. And they also have echolocation, which is going to be important. So their language is just pitch, and it's pitches on a musical scale. And to represent that, Simulanger chose 53 tet. I don't know how much I need to explain this because he's probably explained it better than me, but the basic idea is typical modern Western music is 12 tet, which stands for 12 tone equal temperament. So the 12 notes of the chromatic scale go from one octave up to the next octave, and each half step in that sequence is an equal distance from the next step. Or not an equal distance, but the ratio are all equal. And what advantage this gives is that you maintain the octave, because the octave is always double the frequency of the previous octave. And then it gets kind of close enough to the other musical intervals to like make sense to our ears. It's not perfect, but it's like kind of close everywhere. Whereas there are other musical systems that will be perfect in some intervals and way off in others. Other tuning systems. 53 tone equal temperament, which is what was used here, instead of taking the octave and divide it into 12 units, you divide it into 53 units. So it's much more precise than modern Western music, possibly more precise than a human ear can handle. And all 53 notes are being used in this language. So the notes go from A to Z in capitals, A to Z in small letters, and then Simulanger used a dollar sign for the last note. And so you have to get all these intervals. And there were a bunch of mistakes that I made early on that I had to like talk out to figure out what I was doing. Basically, first of all, let's jump back to the screen. So I had originally thought, okay, so length would have an inverse relationship to frequency. So the longest length is the lowest note, and the shortest length is the highest note. And I tried to do that, but like it was really hard to match up one for one frequencies to notes for some reason. Let me actually say, when we're talking about this, what is going on here is that this is representing grooves carved into rock at precise lengths, so that when an Eridian hits it with an echolocation pulse, that will be transformed into a note, so that these chords will correspond to the frequencies of that word, right? So that's why, you assume that like the longer lines are selecting lower harmonics and returning a lower frequency. Again, I couldn't match it up, so I had to kind of go the science route. I'm not good at the science. I like don't really know this stuff. And I got like bad formulas and stuff. Eventually I found the formula for modeling these grooves as an open cylinder, and that's what I used. That might be off by a little bit because I don't really know what shape was intended here, but that's what I used. And then I went here and I had to figure out, okay, what are the actual frequencies, right, of each note? And for that, I was like, he actually told me it was between 1000 and 2000 hertz was the octave I was looking for, which means Iridians have relatively high voices, much higher than a human voice typically is. So you see 1000, and I go the next one. It took me a while. I thought it would just be like take the number and add like 1/53rd after that, but that's not how it works. In order to do equal temperament correctly, what you do is you take the 53rd root of 2. So if you have 12 tet, that's the 12th root of 2 times whatever the previous note was. And that will give you the next note. Now, because of the way that music works, if you know about music theory, you know that you will always end up with irrational numbers. So that is one reason that this is not 100% precise. The other reason this is not 100% precise is that the formula that I used here might not be exactly the right formula to use, but it ended up being good enough. And so I transcoded all of the lengths here, converted them to frequencies. I rounded them just to have round numbers to work with. And then there are 8 different intervals that are listed here in the document. Unison we don't have to care about because unison just means it's the same note. But there's a perfect fifth, a perfect fourth, a major third, minor third, major sixth, minor sixth, and a harmonic seventh. All of those are used in the language in order to make what I'm presuming are like chords, right? That, and every word or every morpheme is a chord. So I had to know what all of these intervals were for this. And this was another thing that was not precise because 53 tet is very close to giving you the correct intervals, but it is not perfect, especially as I get to the end and I'm like, okay, well, I hit 2000. Actually, these intervals are above my octave, but I have to like transcode this back. So it was actually quite a lot of like typing something down and then go look at the dictionary or the glossary here and see, okay, do I have something that matches close enough? Sometimes I match it exactly. Sometimes I'm like, I look at the glossary. Okay, well, I wrote down G38. It's probably actually G37. This could be a source of error. That's entirely possible. So that's what I was working with. And eventually that got me to writing out a gloss. Once I had the gloss, it was fairly straightforward. The syntax of the language is a little bit alien in a way that I was not totally capturing when I was trying to translate. So I'm not 100% sure that I've gotten everything right in terms of structure. One thing I did see is like this mouth hole secret experiencer. This sequence pops up often. And I remembered seeing like somebody Tumblr post about in the book, Eridians consider eating to be a private activity. Maybe this has to do with the fact that they have one orifice that takes in food and expels waste. So it's like a different biology that leads to that feeling, or maybe it's just purely cultural that this is developed differently. I will say I did accidentally have the English of the first line revealed to me, and there is a reason to believe that I have, with combining with the Eridians like not liking people seeing them eat, and me seeing this okay mouth hole secret experiencer and what that actually meant to Simlanger. that makes me think that the one who watches us eat is kind of right as a like a literal thing. However, I tried to forget that and tried to translate it as if I didn't know what it meant to him, so this might be actually overly literal, but I was trying to avoid being too influenced by that. But we got a whole lot of like weirdness here. And actually I need to get up the so just to compare, this one did not expand a whole lot, but our initial text was the enemies from the shadow cannot be harmed with blade or club. Only your priests and mages can harm them. They seek the orb of the unknown sun. The orb has immense power that they cannot be allowed to have. The invaders must be repelled at all costs. And my translation from Eridian is the one who watches us eat is asleep, and the thrum sends us away. When the air gets hot, one opens the shell by hand, and the one who closes the shell is evil. The one who watches us eat pushed us against the wall with firm hands on loud days until it became rough and broken. The vision of this shell is heard to us until one perceives the mouth hole from the light in this hole, these many air lands. If the shells opened again in this place for peace, Arid gets cold again, and the Rocky Bear Manatee goes back into the Western Cave. I should make sure that's something that makes some kind of sense. Some things that make me unsure are like certain statements made about the syntax favoring states rather than events. Makes me uncertain about a lot of things. But this is what we got. And it's interesting. It is not what I had. But anyway, this Saturday at 8 a.m. Central Time, we'll have a stream and we will talk about this with anybody from the script ring who is able to come. And maybe you guys can be in chat and talk about it. Once again, the playlists are in the description. If you have just heard me rambling about all of this and don't know what's going on, well, go to the playlist. There's one for the script ring itself and one for the whole relay, and go back and watch through and see what the heck is going on. So, anyway, this was interesting and difficult, but we'll see how well I did. And also, this prophecy is definitely not shaping up to make any kind of sense. Again, thank you to all my patrons, and thank you for watching and liking and commenting and subscribing, and happy conlanging.